We're joined on Planet Rock today by two giants of rock. First, a keyboard legend who's worked with some of music's most dangerous individuals, from Ozzy Osbourne to Andrew Lloyd Webber, and for almost 20 years has been the man with the giant keyboard stack in Deep Purple. Don Airey, welcome to Planet Rock.
Hi, Mark. Very nice to be here.
And also a man who took his style from Gene Krupa and Ginger Baker, and along the way invented a whole new way to play the drums and influenced people like Chad Smith, Dave Grohl, and billions of others. Also, the last man standing from Deep Purple Mark I, it's the legend that is Ian Paice.
Hello, man. Good morning. How's everybody?
Well, I think we're all good, aren't we? And this is great news, frankly.
We're all still vertical.
Now, over the next hour, we're going to talk about life, the universe, and rock music, all of which come together neatly in the new album called Turning to Crime. And while Deep Purple haven't been averse to a cover version, this is the first complete album of work written by other songwriters. So it'd be interesting to know, how did it come about?
Well, initially, the idea was about 20 years old, but it never came from us. It came from record companies and management and people who thought they could make some money out of it. But the world changed. We couldn't tour. We couldn't get back together. So what do you have left? You have studio work and somebody else's old music. And so the idea was put to us again. We thought, if we're going to do it, we'll do it properly.
Now, I imagine that when this idea first came about, everyone in the band's going to have a list of their favourite songs. So I wonder, how did you begin to start to choose music to do a project like this?
Well, we had some very noisy conference calls with Bob Ezra and the band and our manager. And I think the first one we agreed on, everybody wanted to do Oh Well. Some of the songs, I mean, I'd never heard in my life before. I'd never heard 7 and 7 or Rockin' Pneumonia or, Lucifer. I don't think anybody had heard Lucifer, actually. It was a song that Steve had seen at his first concert. He went to see the Bob Seger System in Detroit, and they played Lucifer, and it just knocked him sideways. Yeah, I think he was about 13 or 14. It changed his life, and it's a great song.
Well, if you look down at the track listing, like you say, 7 and 7 years, you've got tracks by Fleetwood Mac, B.B. King, Bob Dylan, the Yardbirds. It's a proper sort of roots who's who, isn't it? And were you trying to capture that? Were you aiming to capture origins, or, like you say, big moments in life? Is that where you were trying to go with it?
I think the premise was to choose a style of music that influenced us, an artist who may have caught our attention, or a time in our lives in the music when it was really important to us. So we had like a broad canvas to choose from. And the selection of songs was by that awful thing called democracy. I think Ian Gillan's put 5 choices in, and none of them got chosen. So he was the big loser there.
That's not democracy as far as Ian would see it, I'm sure. Interestingly, actually, Don, looking through some of the tracks you recorded on there originally wouldn't have had keyboard parts. So I'm thinking like Jenny Take a Ride from Mitch Ryder as an example. It's as a keyboard player, how do you approach that if there isn't kind of a reference point?
No, there's a big keyboard presence on Jenny Take a Ride.
Oh, right, okay.
I remember playing Detroit with Richie, with Rainbow in 1980. We were talking about Mitch Ryder. I said, I know Mitch lives here and I'd love to invite him to the gig, because he was such a hero of mine. And to my surprise, Richie knew all about Mitch as well. He said, oh, yeah, he's one of my favourites. He said, we nicked the start of Jenny Take a Ride for Kentucky Woman. And if you listen to Kentucky Woman on the Book of Talesian, it's almost the same, So I think Jenny was my choice. It's been one of my favourite singles ever. Just the whole production, the enormity of the sound, the great guitar playing from Jim McCarthy. It just had everything, and Mitch's voice.
Reimagined by Deep Purple from their album Turning to Crime, which is the first album that they've done in their entire history, which is entirely cover versions, and quite fabulous it is too. We're talking to Don Airey and Ian Paice about the album, and in just a few minutes we shall have more from them here on Planet Rock. I spoke to, a few years ago, Rush on their 30th anniversary, and they had just done a covers album, which was to the same thing, their influences. And they said, actually, from a recording point of view, it was one of the least pressured times they'd had because they didn't have to worry about the songwriting. It was already there for it. Now, did you feel the same?
Well, yes, you have a template to work from. The songs you've chosen, you sort of know anyway. So it's just a matter of trying to pay respect to the original recording, but put your own character into it. So you have a starting point. It's so much easier. And God bless my son James for getting me a great drum sound in my little studio. So we had something really good to work with. You know, if the sound is good to begin with, you start to feel better about it.
One good thing about the process is you had a lot of time to do what you do, instead of usually in the studios. Come on, hurry up. I mean, Bob Ezrin only ever allows me one take, two at the most. And then there's this terrible silence down the headphones, and you go, so how was that, Bob? How was what? That solo I just did. Oh, we've moved on. Yeah, we've moved on.
The sound of it is one of the most amazing things. It sounds great. It doesn't sound like you're all in your individual homes. It does sound extraordinary. Did you have to get stuff? Did you have to go and buy kit to do this, or did you already have things, your own recording equipment?
We brought a couple of super duper compressors in, which is what you'd find in any professional studio. But quite honestly, I built my little room for me. I wasn't thinking of guitarists or key. It's a little drum room, so I have a good starting place. It's the pluses and minuses, When you're together in a room with your friends and you hit a problem, you can fix it in 2 minutes. That's not working. Do that. Okay, we do that, and you're running again. When you're working like this, that problem can take 24 hours to solve or longer. So that's one of the downsides. But Don alluded to it. If you've got a part that's not really working for you, you can do it 100 times till you get it right, and you're not peeing anybody else off in the studio by making them do it time and time again, because you are aware that there's only so many takes in the band before you lose it. If you don't get it within 4 or 5 takes, you ain't going to get it that day. You might as well stop and go home or find a nice bar and feel sorry for yourself. So on your own, if you just find that moment, or you're looking, as a drummer, looking for that drum fill, you can take as long as you want about it and then just slot it in when you got it. So that's the plus side of it. But it's better to be in a room with your pals, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let's talk about the first track release. We've mentioned it already. It's an amazing video that goes with it as well. If anybody wants to watch that, it's fantastic. Fleetwood Mac's Oh Well. Now, I was just doing some research here. John McVie and Mick Fleetwood, Ian, once voted number 2 to you and Roger Glover as number 1 in the best rock rhythm section. Did you feel any pressure recording that track from a rhythm section point of view?
There's some things we didn't do. I couldn't get that cowbell thing that Mick did, so I didn't even try and do it. I think you can find it on YouTube somewhere. You can hear a studio take where you can hear Mick counting for them while he's doing the stuff, because they were all over the place. No, so what we didn't think we could do properly, we didn't put in, But the rest of it is a fairly simple tune. The genius is in the guitar, the riff itself. As a drumming thing, it's like riding a bike, Once you know the basics of it, you don't fall off the bike again. And there's not too many really complex things. I'm not trying to do wheelies and go round and round, It is fairly straightforward. It's a matter of getting it to feel right. Once you've got it to feel right, you've done the job. That's it. That's the end of it.
I think I sent Ian, when I heard the vocals, I sent Gillen an email saying, it's quite a thing to make Oh Well your own. He just put his own stamp on it, and I think it's amazing what he did.
It was interesting, actually, Don, I thought, when I was listening to it as well, as someone who came to the band after John retired, I say nearly 20 years ago now, there must have been a lot of iconic keyboard parts that he created that you had to then think about how you're going to approach those playing live. I mean, was that ever a challenge for you?
Oh, it was a great challenge. First, how did John get that distorted sound from the organ? I don't think I've ever really found out. I don't think John knew how he did it. He just did it, It was one of those marvelous mysteries in music. But yeah, things like the solo in Highway Star. Ignorance was bliss, actually. I play it two-handed solo. When John did it, he did it as 2 separate overdubs. And I don't think he ever played the solo with 2 hands. So yeah, one up on John Lott there. Yeah.
Perfect. While we're talking about classic Deep Purple tracks, obviously it would be remiss of us not to include one. And Ian, from your point of view, I'd like you to, if you can, what would be the best Deep Purple track from your perspective, from the drummer's perspective, from the back catalogue?
Well, probably not one of the big hits. Most of the big hits are, by nature of what they are, fairly simple rhythmically. They have to be, or else they don't really work. I listen to Smoke on the Water, and the drums are pretty good on that. because the drum sound is so close to you, it's so tight to your ears that any mistakes you make are just magnified tenfold. It's not like having a huge echoey drum sound where you sort of blend into the background. A couple of things I did later on with the Mark III and the Mark IV band I rather like. But it comes down to, as Don said, it's subjective. What I might think is brilliant, somebody won't be able to tell the difference. You know, I remember we did on the Machine Head record on Pictures of Home, we did the basic track and I didn't like the drum intro. I said, I can do it better. So I did it again and I tracked it on and I was much happier. The other guys couldn't tell the difference between the two things. So, you know, you do sort of get into your own little world about it because it's, you know, it's your thing, it's your baby. You have to be happy with it, you know, and then worry about everybody else afterwards.
No, I'm sure that's very true. And what about from your perspective, Don? From you know, which of those classic tracks do you look forward to when it comes up on the set list?
I used to like it when we did Strange Kind of Woman, mainly because it was the first thing when I did the first rehearsal when I stood in for John. Once it kicked off, I thought, my God, everyone's just playing like they used to. You know, I couldn't really believe it. And at the end of it, Roger came over and said, "Well, welcome to the band." So that's you know, that's a big favourite of mine, Strange Kind of Woman. I also like Hard Loving Man. You know, I like the longer songs, and that's always a big challenge when we do it. You know, there's a big gong before the keyboard solo, and I used to do it on one of my keyboards when we didn't carry the big gong round anymore. And unbeknownst to me, I trod on the pedal that moves the sound on. So instead of a gong coming out, this trombone came out. Oh. I tried to carry on playing. I could hardly stand up.
You're on tour at the moment, and next year heading off around the world again. And this must feel like life is you're coming back to your natural home again, surely. That's where
you have real fun. You know, it's a different discipline. When you've got those people, if it doesn't matter, 20 kids in a pub back room or 20,000, you got to get it right, and that's the kicker of it.
And how about you, Don? Looking forward to getting back out on the road?
Yeah, I think so. It was a funny time. Ian and I were talking about it previously. It's the longest time any of us have ever been home. You know, doing the garden, clearing the garage out. You know, doing all the things you never really have time to do because you're always packing your suitcase ready to go off on the tour, or you just come back from one and you're knackered. I think my wife will be very glad to see, you know, those two big suitcases in the hall, me going out the house and the money coming back in, you know.
We're going to come back to the album now. Of the tracks on the new album, I'd like you to pick your personal favourite. Don, do you have a personal favourite of the tracks?
I think I do. I think Let the Good Times Roll that we took from a Ray Charles, Quincy Jones record. I think it was called, the album's called Genius, and it came out in 1959. It's one of my most prized possessions. And Ian and I played it together before. I run a little blues festival every couple of years in my village to raise money for the local hospitals, you know. So Ian was so knocked out with it when we played it, you know, that became an obvious choice for the album. So I think, you know, I'm very proud to hear a heavy rock band swinging like we do on it.
Although you won't need it, good luck with the album. It's a great record. I know everyone's going to enjoy it very much. And on behalf of Planet Rock, we'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today to talk about it. It's brilliant.
Our pleasure.